Hi everyone, welcome back to the 5710 podcast after our 2-week break after we went on our study trips. This week we have Fergus Feilden from Feilden Fowles Architects. Established in 2009 by Fergus Feilden and Edmund Fowles, Feilden Fowles have continued their evolution into a leading practice across many architectural fields including arts and culture, education and workplace design, and were named BD's Young Architect of the Year in 2016. The collaborative studio aims to encapsulate the essence of site and place from their early concept designs, and they are primarily interested in the social impact of their architecture and the way in which it improves the surrounding community and enhances the lives of the people within it. So, hello Fergus.
Hello.
Have you had an okay day so far?
Yep, very nice journey up here on the train.
That's a lovely
Edinburgh.
journey.
Yeah, beautiful.
The scenery is really nice, quite long though.
Yeah.
What time did you leave this morning?
It wasn't too bad, about 7:15.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Not like a red eye sort of thing. It's worth it. Are you quite used to doing long journeys? Because do you live in Bath and then you commute to London? That's
I live in Bath.
Quite a long commute every day.
Exactly. I live in Bath, work in London, and also lots of my projects are in the north of England.
Oh wow.
So I have a project in Carlisle, Yorkshire, we did one near Glasgow, all over. So, yeah.
How do you manage the long commute with what's probably a very busy work life in London? Does it?
I find the commute and the travel for work really helpful. Actually, I use that time to reflect, and sometimes it's a bit less intense than when I'm in the office.
Yes. So don't have people like poking you on the shoulder.
No, quite exactly. So I use that time to do writing, to prepare things like talks, pitches, and I find it really helpful.
Yeah.
And I love to see the country and get to know lots of the different places.
Mm-hmm. In the practice itself, you seem to do quite a lot of like large scale construction models. Like I saw one for Homerton College where it was 1:20 column details.
Yes.
Is that really helpful for you and your practice to get the designs right in your
It's incredibly helpful. That specific model was used for helping the client to understand the quality of the spaces and to literally put their head inside the model, see the quality of light and the texture of the materials, because we were using the materials that we're going to build the building out of. So I love using models. I think that there's a lot of pressure on using models due to the time and the resource it takes to make them, which is quite a challenge. But it's something that we certainly keep investing in.
You do them all in house.
We make them all in house at the moment, and I think that's far more useful in terms of them being a working model. Yeah,
exactly. Similarly, your visuals and your presentation drawings are really beautiful, especially like ones you put on your website and on Instagram. They're all done in-house as well, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they're very. We've kind of developed a bit of a house style that is more. It's more kind of painterly than kind of photorealistic, because often they're trying to, same as a model or a drawing or a piece of narrative. You're trying to convey your vision for something and convey a certain message.
You have a lot more control over it than
absolutely
sending it out to, and it's the same with the models as well. Instead of putting them up.
Yeah.
And I know all this because I've gone through your website, and you have a very transparent website. I feel like you've got lots of your sketches and your design process. Is that important to you to be open to the public?
I think it's critical, and I think if you're confident about your design, then one should be, or kind of a practice should be open and transparent. I think that within the profession, there's so much learning that doesn't kind of get capitalized on because of people not having the time or the willingness to share information. So we're a very young practice still. At 9 years old, we're still relatively a very young practice. And we've benefited from other people being kind of open and transparent, and so now that we're kind of growing into our kind of growing into our stride, we're finding that actually we want to be sharing information as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. You said that you've got projects in the north now. Is that quite different from working in London? Because most of your earlier projects were in London.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. We've done a lot of projects which are in a kind of rural context, and our very first projects were in Wales Cornwall, and actually the London work is much more recent. So for a long time we've been working in the kind of regions, and that's always been our kind of forte, really. So more recently it's quite interesting now balancing that with some more kind of London-based projects. But
they're a lot bigger, are they?
Well, interestingly, all of our big projects are out of London. So at the moment, I think over time that may change. I think we've learnt a lot from working in different regions and with different vernaculars and all of the particularities that come with it. So different geologies and everything, really. So
does it help you keep like a fresh mind when you approach so many different projects?
It does. I mean, we certainly enjoy spending quite a lot of time at the outset of any project with the client on site. Ed and I traditionally have kind of cycled to each site for the first time, and that started out of kind of necessity when we were kind of 30 miles from the train station in Wales. But we since then we found that actually it's a great way to first encounter encounter a site. It's a nice tradition, and you encounter somewhere slowly, and that's really helpful, I find. So
that's really interesting. So what memory, either from university or in your wider career, is kind of your favourite one, and something that you hold on to when you, like, maybe you're struggling with something, so you kind of recall that sort of memory?
There are innumerable examples of various kind of struggles which we've kind of normally overcome, and those are often the most satisfying moments, I think. So a recent example has been this layered and textured concrete we're doing at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, and it was a real journey with the client. Starting out with the concept of rammed earth walls, which then evolved through a number of factors into concrete walls, and then we did a number of kind of samples and mock-ups. And then eventually, the whole thing has kind of come back together, and we have a client who's delighted with the project, and so are we. But there's been this journey over 4 years to this point, and I think that winning over the tougher clients, the clients with the highest aspirations, there's a real pride in that. But I certainly remember when we won that project, because we were a relatively young practice. We were kind of 5 years old. And we hadn't built that much, or not that many projects of significance, and we were informed on the day about winning it, and that's quite unusual in itself. And we knew then how significant it was. We knew how special the project was, the client, the context, and it was I think that's probably the most euphoric we've ever felt at the kind of outset of a project.
And that kind of keeps you going.
Absolutely.
When the project gets tough.
Absolutely, yeah.
So as a fairly young practice, maybe what do you look for when maybe a student, either part 1 or part 2 from the UK, what would you be looking for if they applied to you, either personality or work-wise, and work-wise?
Personality, it probably varies depending on the level of the student. So at part 1, we're looking for beautiful work, beautiful representation, a kind of consideration of their approach. But there's a lot more kind of leniency and tolerance towards the odd rogue project within that kind of setup. So whereas at part 2, I would have said that you're looking for a critical eye where I don't mind if the portfolio is slimmer, but they haven't necessarily, they haven't shown projects that they're not entirely happy with. And when we interview students, I'll normally be trying to kind of find out how much control they have over their projects. Often there's a group project presented, and it's really important to understand who took ownership over which elements, whether they're actually kind of in control of the narrative, whether that student led on it, or whether actually it's come more from a tutor or something.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think personality is critical, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the most kind of bold and outgoing personality, but there needs to be a kind of a focus and a passion and a commitment to architecture, and especially to being in a small practice, because in a small practice the relationships are particularly kind of close.
You can't have one person that's not.
Exactly. If you're working in a team of two on a project for a year or two, then that relationship's so fundamental.
Yeah, exactly.
And we try really hard to make sure that we recruit people who sit comfortably in our team and have something kind of socially to contribute as well.
So the final question, and we ask everyone this, you've probably heard it. If you could recommend a grand tour for students of architecture, or even one specific building, what would it be?
Well, the building that probably had the biggest impact on me personally was Reiach and Hall.
Okay.
And I went to visit the chapel on a cycle tour of Europe, and I think I was 19 at the time, and I was kind of roughly plotting a course between different exciting and interesting elements of architecture across Europe. And when I visited Reiach and Hall, I just found it had a huge emotional impact on me. I think that may have partly been because I'd been on the road for a month and I was lonely and various other things. But the situation of the chapel on the hill in quite a poor region of France, in among the woodland, and this sculptural form that emerges, it had a bigger kind of emotional impact on me than anything else. And perhaps somewhere it's actually influenced me and our designs, and my passion for doing these projects, which are buildings in the round that are kind of very much of their context, and just I think especially, I mean, I particularly love the sculptural qualities of that project, and only more recently are we finding that our projects have got the kind of the opportunity to also indulge in some of those more formal gestures. So,
what about a city?
City-wise, I spent quite a lot of time in Berlin in the last 15 years, and I've seen it go through huge changes. But I think for me, what I love about Berlin is the generosity of space, and the kind of both the kind of way that the architecture is simple and robust, but also there's a life on the streets that kind of expands and contracts through the seasons, and there's all sorts of more bohemian sides of Berlin and more kind of business orientated, and this mingling of worlds.
It's a great contrast.
It's a great contrast.
I can also recommend Berlin.
So the swimming lakes, for example, it's a completely different element of their culture, and I've been lucky enough to have. Well, my best friend, one of my best friends is German and has lived there, so I visited him numerous times, and he's always shown me different elements of the city, and that's again a great way to see a city from within almost.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of as a tourist, which is how I saw it. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Fergus. Thank you for listening as well. Tune in next week. I'm not actually entirely sure who's coming next week. I will put it in the description underneath. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.